Bringing you the top stories from Bonners Ferry to St. Mary's and everywhere in between, this is the North Idaho Prepcast with Ryan Scaggs.
That's right. It's another edition of the North Idaho Prepcast on IdahoSports.com. The Black Void, once known as Brandon Baney, joined by Ryan Scaggs, as always. So for those of you that are listening to this podcast on IdahoSports.com or wherever you download your podcasts, you're not going to notice anything unusual. But if you're watching the video version of this on the IdahoSports.com YouTube channel or Facebook page, you're going to see that I don't have a working camera right now. So we're graced by Ryan's great bearded face, and otherwise I'm just the black icon on the screen. So.
I'm the one that's got the face for radio, so
yeah, we're gonna put our listenership and viewership to the test this week. That's for sure.
Yeah. I apologize to whatever ratings happen to drop. I can see the viewership already dissipating because they're stuck looking at me.
Yeah, it's cratering as we speak. It's like the stock market. We're watching it crash in real time. So okay, real quick story. Why don't I have a camera? Well, in the last podcast I was recording, by the way, I'm leaving town tomorrow for the holidays, right? Traveling for Christmas. So I'm shoehorning in like all the podcasts we do like into like a really tight window here. So it's just like nonstop podcasting. It's a lot of fun. So my mouse on my computer died like in the last podcast. So to plug in to charge it, I had to unplug something from the computer, and it just happened to be the camera. I don't have enough USB ports for all of this technology at my fingers, Ryan.
I thought you were just going to be in your Christmas PJs hanging out drinking eggnog, so you just didn't want anybody to see it.
Right on the sly. That's right. Yeah.
That's right.
So yeah, my face will be back next week. Let's dive in because there was a lot. You know, I kind of do one of these each week for each region of the state, and the North by far had the most going on this weekend and this past week. So let's start with wrestling, the big tri-state meet that brings schools from Washington and Montana, as well as teams from Northern Idaho. Ryan, you were actually there for a little. Oh, and yeah. Oregon as well.
Yeah.
So it's really a quad state, right?
Yeah. No, it's a huge event. I know that they've had teams in the past come from other states too. So I got a chance to go on Friday and watch some of our area guys. And man, there were some schools that just looked awesome. Coeur d'Alene obviously won the team title, paced by Ryland Rogers, winning the championship at 195 pounds. He was also voted the outstanding wrestler of the tournament. I don't think that was a surprise to anyone. I think one of the better surprises or just showings from area kids was Hoyt Haas from Lewiston at 120 pounds who won a title. And I want to say it was in the quarterfinals. He had a triple OT win over a defending state champ from Washington. So, you know, that was a huge showing from them. And then Tristan Bremer at 132 from Lewiston also got a championship. I think those were the only three guys that actually got titles from North Idaho at the tournament. But Coeur d'Alene winning the team title, Post Falls taking 5th, Lewiston finished 13th, which 47 teams, and they're the best 47, I would say, in their given classification, some of the best teams in the Pacific Northwest. So you place in the top 8 at this tournament, you're going to fare well as far as the rest of the season goes. And some great showings by area schools. If you want me to go through, I mean, I got a whole laundry list of guys, but as far as top 8 finishes go, but just some great wrestling, you know, by North Idaho guys. I mean, Potlatch, the small school, shows up with 2 guys finishing in the top 8 at 160 and 152 pounds. Timberlake had Evan Howell and James Billingsley. Bonners Ferry had 2 guys when Brandon Williams and Eli Richards. Kellogg had Ricky Harrison, and then they had Wyatt High and Coulter Wood finish. Those are all top 8 finishes. Lakeland had 3 guys in the top 8, and between Jaron Knopp, Devin Suko, and Matt Williams. Lake City had Zach McDonald, who got a runner-up finish at 106. Priest River had Colin McLantis that finished 6th. Then obviously Post Falls had slug of guys finish in the top 8. Malcolm Duthie. They had Tyson Barnhart, Ryder Seguin. Laguna finished in the top 4. Gentry Smith took third at 182, and Trevor Miller took fourth at 195. And then Lewiston, obviously 2 champs in a 6th place. Logan Meisner finished 6th at 170, but Coeur d'Alene, showed up and showed out, with the championship finish. Only 1 champion, but just got a really great showing out of their lineup. 2 guys placed at 98 pounds, Kelly and Alexander. Bradley finished 8th at 106, Larson 4th at 132, Prangley 3rd at 160, Spielman 7th at 220, and Jackson Washington finished 4th at 285 pounds. And then Piazza was actually runner-up at 152 pounds. So they were without Gunnar Julio and Dylan Moffitt and still won the team title.
Yeah, and Gunnar Julio, is it still nursing a football injury? What's going on there?
I believe so. And then Dylan Moffitt's got an elbow that he's taken care of too. They're hopefully have them back after Christmas break, or later in the season. Hopefully they're coming back. But those are 2 hammers in your lineup that they're missing right now, and they're still winning the Tri-State championship, which is a pretty awesome testament to the Coeur d'Alene team. I think we're kind of seeing a changing of the guard in North Idaho as far as Post Falls kind of handing the torch to Coeur d'Alene now. And the way they finished, it wouldn't surprise me to see them in the top 3 at the 5A in the state tournament this winter.
Okay, so give me a team or an athlete that wasn't on your radar prior to Tri-State but now is.
I know that they're good, but the 2 from Lewiston, Hoyt Haas and Tristan Bremer, were 2 guys that I kind of just overlooked, and they're both really solid wrestlers. But coming and winning Tri-State, that's, I would keep my eye on for those 2. We all know about Rylan Rogers and Gunnar Julio, but those 2 from Lewiston, Hoyt was an All-American, little guy wrestler and all the way through, and he kind of took a couple years. I don't want to say break, but he just didn't really travel as much. But he's a very, very well-known wrestler in the community. But those 2, I really see them making some noise down the stretch. And then Zach McDonald getting runner-up at 106 from Lake City is another kid I think that's gonna bode well for later in the season too.
Yeah, that's so exciting. That's so many athletes. I think what stood out to me is when you were talking about Potlatch going there and competing well. That's awesome to see. And
yeah,
we lose sight of those 1A schools sometimes in wrestling, so it's exciting to see them.
Yeah, so they're gonna, and they compete at the 2A level. Those 1A schools
right.
do. So to see those 2 guys come to Tri-State and place is pretty awesome.
Yeah. Well, there's going to be lots of good wrestling action post New Year. There's probably some stuff going on next week as well, but we're getting to the holidays now.
Yeah, you've got Raleigh Lane coming up down in southern Idaho too. So
yeah,
there's some good tournaments coming up. The North Idaho Rumble is going to be after New Year. The River City Duels. So there's some big tournaments coming up in the next 3-4 weeks.
Yeah, the Raleigh Lane is always kind of like, in a way, for the 5A schools, kind of the state preview, right? Whoever wins the Raleigh Lane a lot of times ends up winning the 5A title. Meridian won it last year. So yeah. Let's shift to basketball, because man, there was no shortage of exciting action for basketball this past week as well. And in fact, one of our basketball teams is playing as we're recording this on Tuesday afternoon. That would be Lake City. So Lake City and Post Falls, their girls basketball teams, both went to the Tarkanian Classic. We talked about this last week on the podcast, Ryan, where this is an annual event held in Las Vegas. And again, this isn't like any team can come sign up. Like you have to be selected. Like they only take the best of the best teams. And so for Lake City and Post Falls to both be selected was a tremendous honor. Century also from Pocatello went and competed as well. I think based upon their past prestige, they're nowhere near the team they've been the past couple of years, and they kind of ran out of the gym in all of their games. And now when that happens, they will have to prove to the committee that they deserve to come back in future years. It's a highly competitive tournament. Long story short, Lake City and Post Falls entering Tuesday, the day we're recording this, were both undefeated. Lake City in the Diamond bracket, which is the most difficult, and Post Falls in the Ruby bracket, which is the second most difficult. That is so impressive for both of these teams.
Yeah, and we talked about Post Falls kind of in our preview that I don't want to say this is an unexpected run, but they weren't as highly touted coming into the season as the Coeur d'Alene and Lake City teams were, and Post Falls has just put together an absolute, I mean, masterful run. Obviously, I think they lost their title game to Lee, I believe, but we were talking about that off air, like the most Southern school name ever, but the Lee Generals. But yeah, Post Falls to make it to the title game of that tournament. I mean, an awesome run for the Trojans. And then Lake City, last I checked, they were ahead. I mean, as we record, so they were ahead in that the first half. As they're closing towards halftime, they were up by 1, I believe was the last I saw of the score. But an awesome showing by the T-Wolves too. Just getting battle tested this time of year and taking it towards your league schedule. I know Lake City next week plays Chiawana, a really good team out of the Tri-Cities in Washington, and then they start hitting their league schedule where they're going to have Coeur d'Alene the following game. So, really kind of getting their stride and seeing how things move towards the back end of the schedule is going to be a really good test for this T-Wolf team.
Yeah, so Post Falls, their journey is over in the first round. These are like 16 team brackets, and it's a gauntlet for sure. So Post Falls in their first game played Clark High School, which is a local Las Vegas school. They won 60-46. Then they got to the semifinals on Saturday. So that first game was Friday. Then Saturday they played Eagle Crest High School, which is in Colorado, and they won that game 46-42. That put them in the semifinals Monday night, where they defeated Birmingham, which is not from Alabama. It's actually from California, Birmingham High School. And they won that game 46-30. And then today, yes, playing from Alabama, the Lee Generals, which is like the most Southern name ever. Shocking that they're from Alabama. And they only lost by a possession, 52-49. Yep. So
yeah, close game in that one. And, I think that they're going to be pretty excited about the possible run towards state. I mean, what happens in North Idaho this winter is going to be that is an absolute just, I don't want to say they're playing with 6-ounce gloves. Let's put it that way. Is when in their dog fights, it's going to be a UFC match in this league schedule between Lake City, Coeur d'Alene, and Post Falls.
Yeah, it's just mind-boggling to think of that district will get 1.5 teams to state. Now, I can pretty much guarantee you at this point, whoever takes second from up north is going to beat the 5th place team from District 3. There's a real drop-off after the top 4 teams in District 3. So
our 3rd place team would probably beat them too.
Yes, which is the sad part. A really good team is going to be stuck at home. Lake City in their bracket, their opener Friday, they played Desert Oasis, which is a Vegas high school, and they won by 10, 81-71. Then they played Linwood, California, Saturday in the quarterfinals and won 55-30. The semifinals on Monday, they played Bishop Laughlin, which is a school from Brooklyn, New York, and they beat them 54-31. So like none of these games have been close. Their closest game was the opener that they won by 10. And then they're playing Spring Valley, which is, I believe, a Nevada school. It is. So Spring Valley is who they're playing in the championship currently. And it looked like it was kind of a tight back and forth game. And we'll have an update on that next week, of course, on the podcast. But I mean, to beat teams from California and Brooklyn, New York, and I mean this is just awesome. I'm so excited for Idaho to be so well represented.
Yeah, no, I mean, like we talked about, it's a prestigious tournament, and to be beating the caliber of teams, I know that we talked about it in volleyball with what Skyview did in volleyball. To be making noise like this, obviously it's gonna pay dividends, but I think a rising tide's going to lift all boats as far as competition, because it's going to make other teams step up that they're looking at the Lake Cities, or looking up at Coeur d'Alene, looking up at Post Falls, and not to slight any of the other teams around the state, but it's going to be who, I think they're all chasing Lake City right now at this point, but that's just my opinion.
And oh, by the way, Coeur d'Alene also has put together a nice week, right? They're still undefeated. They defeated this past week Lewis and Clark from Washington, 58-28. They played Mount Spokane on Saturday and won 72-30.
Yeah.
And now they're playing a series of games over in Yakima, Washington. They beat West Valley High from Yakima yesterday, 82-25. And they're playing Eisenhower High School today as we're recording this on Tuesday. So they're also kind of lapping the competition, as it were, from the state of Washington.
Yeah, and they beat some quality teams out of the GSL. I mean, Mount Spokane's no slouch, and neither is Lewis and Clark. Lewis and Clark historically has been a really solid basketball team. And those games aren't even close. So, I've been talking to a few people about, Idaho as a whole kind of distancing itself. And it's like, how does Idaho compare to other states? And, the only real test we get to see is, kind of from the north where they play Washington or, you get to see some of the Utah schools, I guess, back in Eastern Idaho. But, what a difference I think a COVID year makes for some states, because you kind of see the cream rising to the top in Idaho, that they've really distanced themselves this year as far as I want to say Idaho's been the better state for competition. Obviously we don't have the numbers, but if you take our top percentages against the other states, I mean, I'd put us against anybody right now. And that's just coming from me based on what we've seen. And I was actually talking to one of the wrestling coaches at Tri-State about that too, is that, the Idaho and Montana kids in the first few rounds were just, putting it to some of the other states like Washington. And that's not to slight Washington because they got some great teams, but, it just looked, they came out stronger. And it's, I think not losing a year to sports or having a shortened season or anything like that has really made a huge difference for our competition.
That's a great point. I hadn't really thought about that, but yeah, Washington was kind of one of the states that really was cautious and didn't play sports in their traditional seasons last year.
Yeah, they played 6-week abbreviated seasons from the end of January through the 1st of June. And it was really weird and interesting, but yeah, I think they only played like a 4-game football schedule or 5-game football schedule. And, volleyball was kind of the same thing. And so was basketball, and just really, really weird. And so they're kind of playing catch up as to where we had full seasons last year. We were pretty blessed.
Well, and I remember getting an email from a fan up north last year talking about, I think it was at Priest River, where there were a set of brothers that played basketball at Priest River, but they're from Washington originally. And then once Washington had their like spring basketball season, they moved back to Washington and played like a second season in Washington. And the person who emailed me was like, how is this even legal or possible? And I was like, well, it's Washington's problem. It's not, it's not our problem.
That's a good question.
Yeah. I mean, I don't know how that works, but that's something for Washington to figure out. So yeah, that was interesting last year to see that happen. And like, for example, Washington, I think, is, especially with the Omicron variant of COVID-19, I think Washington's getting ready to lock things down again. Already Lakeside, their boys and girls were supposed to go to Welpinit.
They're supposed to go, Garfield Palouse too, and they canceled that game as well.
Yeah, and they were supposed to go to Welpinit for a tournament this past weekend, and they said, we're not going. Because not because it wasn't happening, but because all of the hoops that they had to jump through to participate. So you might start to see more of these Washington, Idaho games get pushed to the side.
Yeah. I mean, I wouldn't be surprised if we see that Chiawana Lake City game get postponed. I mean, it's hard telling what's going to happen. And, obviously, and I don't want to become a health expert or anything like that, but we've seen like Kootenai County itself got rolled back out of crisis standards of care. So, I mean, as far as numbers go in our area, we've been on the decline, which has been a good sign. I mean, it means people are taking care of each other and take care of themselves. So hopefully that's the trend that continues as we see a different variant. But, I don't know what other states are going to do. You kind of just got to control what you can control, and that's what's in front of you day after day.
Yep. And I just think overall, philosophically, the state of Washington is a little more hesitant.
Yes.
Compared to
more
Idaho.
protective.
That's about as nice as I can say that.
Yeah. No, I'm being in a border, right near the border. I mean, we see it here. So there's a stark difference between going to Costco in Coeur d'Alene and going to Costco in the Spokane Valley. Let's put it that way.
I have a cousin that lives in Spokane, so I get updates all the time from him. He works from home, like everybody does there now. So anyways, that's what's going on in girls basketball. A lot of exciting stuff, and we'll have an update on how Lake City finished in the championship of the Tarkanian Classic, which again is phenomenal. Boys basketball.
Did you want to do our power rankings, or do you want to say that?
Oh, yeah. Let's. Sorry, I completely forgot about that. Okay, so last week on the podcast, we debuted a new segment called the Northern Nine. This is Ryan's power rankings for the 9 best boys and girls basketball teams up north, the North 9. So here is, and if you're watching the video of this, we'll put it up on the screen so you can read along. Otherwise, if you're just listening, we'll read through the whole list. But here are your North 9 for girls basketball this past week, and a little bit of moving up and down the ranks here.
Yeah, so obviously Lake City still at 1. Coeur d'Alene I've got 2nd, and that's nothing. I don't know, I'm gonna make some Lapwai fans mad, but Lapwai didn't do anything wrong. I think that just those 3 5A schools in North Idaho are distancing themselves a little bit right now. I would love to see Lapwai play any of 3 of those teams, kind of like when I would love to have seen a girls and boys Coeur d'Alene Lapwai matchup, like we had Saturday. But that would have been a great doubleheader. But with 2 very competitive teams. But yeah, nothing Lapwai's done wrong. I think it's just those 3 teams right now, in my opinion. This is my opinion for what it's worth. I think that those 3 have kind of distanced themselves a little bit. Timberlake, I've got at 5. Grangeville moved up 1 to 6. Kendrick's up 1. Wallace is up 1. And then entering the poll this week, I have Prairie. So just missing is Kellogg. They were in my rankings last week, and they've dropped out. And then Clearwater Valley is steadily creeping up as they approach the rankings too. They're having a pretty great season themselves. So yeah, that's where we're on for the girls rankings this week.
Yeah, and then we'll talk about what happened in boys basketball, and then we'll put up your boys North 9 in just a second. So yeah, there was a big tournament in boys basketball this past week at Owyhee High School, the new high school in Meridian, their first ever holiday classic. Post Falls and Lake City both went down to compete. And I don't think we're surprised. Post Falls is a team that's breaking in a lot of new varsity players, still kind of learning. They had a mixed bag. And then Lake City, of course, won the whole thing. No surprise there.
And Lake City is, like I said, they weren't even at full strength early in the year, and now we're seeing Zach Johnson enter the fold, and he is an absolute weapon. That team is so outstandingly loaded that I don't want to count chickens before they're hatched, as far as just going and crowning them state champs. But it's Lake City's world right now in basketball and 5A, and I think everybody else is kind of living in it. The rich got richer with Johnson coming back. So it'll be interesting to see. I mean, state tournament, anything can happen. You get a hot night, especially with guard play. You could see maybe Lake City getting slowed down, and who knows, maybe they get upset. But no, the T-Wolves had a great showing down at Owyhee. I believe they beat Pokey in the championship game of that one. And like I said, Johnson had a huge game in the title game. And I think it was like kind of a showing, like Blake Buchanan had a huge game in one of the games. And then the new transfer Hawking had a great game too. And so it just kind of was like, okay, this game so-and-so is going to step up this game. And then, I think we're going to see that throughout the season, is that they're going to try to focus on 1 or 2 guys, and the other outstanding cast around them is going to step up and have a great game.
Yeah, so Lake City defeated Burley 61-46. They played Timberline. The only 5A game they played was against Timberline. They won that game 47-38, and then they beat Pocatello 78-65. For Post Falls, as we said, a little bit more of a mixed bag for the Trojans, but they played Minico and won 44-42. Then they played Pocatello and lost 74-50. and then they bounced back and had to play Timberline in a third place game essentially and lost 39-35. So 2 very narrow losses. And for head coach Mike McLean, one of the best coaches around, I think it's still just kind of a little on the job training for the Trojans.
Well, and they're so young. I mean, they're breaking in a really new team. I mean, obviously they only had one kid that even played on last year's team that had significant minutes. So, it's going to be we said it was going to be an interesting run, and we've seen some guys show up. I mean, Jack Sortino is a stud. I mean, but they're going to go as he goes, and so if he has an off night, like we saw in the Pocatello game, that's kind of what we're going to see out of Post Falls. If if some of the other cast around him can step up, obviously the Trojans will have a decent season, but I don't see them. I really still see Lake City and Coeur d'Alene as the top 2 teams, and Lewiston, I should say too. I'll throw Lewiston in there. I still think Post Falls is the 4th 5A team. But no, Lake City showed up well. Post Falls is just young. I mean, they're breaking in a new cast. They're going to get better, but I really do see, the other northern teams have a little bit of distance on them. Let's put it that way.
Of course. And while that was all happening on Saturday, Ryan, you were at one of the most hyped games in a long time, not just in North Idaho, but I think in the entire state of Idaho, when Lapwai traveled to Coeur d'Alene, 1A versus 5A on Saturday. Give us the recap.
So, people want to say that was like David versus Goliath. There is no way Lapwai is a David. I'm sorry, but it was there was no underdog in that game. That was a battle, and it was exactly what we talked about, kind of previewing that game. Cameron Cope I don't really say have his way inside, but he was such a force inside. But kudos to Lapwai. They got out and ran in transition, and they are so good around the perimeter in transition. I mean, their fast break, they can shoot the 3 as part of their fast break offense. And, not a lot of high school teams can do that, but they've got, 4 guys that can shoot it from 3. And it was a show. I mean, Tylenwood Jones as the point guard had a great game distributing, but he had a great game shooting too. And I'm telling you right now, like as good as Year Out is, Case Wynot is making a case as a sophomore that he could be one of the more dominant players we've seen in the state of Idaho in a long time. And he had an excellent game offensively. Coeur d'Alene did get to Year Out. He fouled out with about a minute and a half left, but it was, I want to say it was too little too late because Lapwai had 4 straight possessions where they hit a 3-pointer down the stretch. It was a 1-point game with about 5 minutes left, and then Lapwai put a little bit of distance on them. But just an entertaining high school basketball game. It felt like a state playoff game because it's 2 teams that you normally would never see each other playing each other, and it just the pace of the game was just awesome. The physicality was there. It was a great atmosphere. Lapwai's fans travel very, very well, so there was probably I would say a 50-50 split as far as representation goes. It was pretty outstanding.
Yeah, 76-68, the final. Lapwai with the win. Sent a big message, I think. That for sure. A 1A beating a 5A is very, very impressive. I forgot to mention,
and a good 5A team. They're not like middle of the road 5A team. They're a good 5A school.
Yeah, that was going to be my question is where do you think Coeur d'Alene stacks up compared to like a Lake City or a Lewiston? Those are kind of the 2 teams that are out front right now, but
I think Coeur d'Alene and Lewiston will split this year. I really do. I think Coeur d'Alene, their guard play is underrated. We knew that Cope was going to be good inside, but they can shoot it around the perimeter too. They were matching Lapwai shot for shot for pretty much most of the game. Lapwai had a 1-point lead at halftime, but it was just, the pace of the game. Coeur d'Alene's gritty and they play pretty solid defense. So I'm going to say the Vikes and Lewiston, it's going to be a toss-up who gets that second seed. Lake City, I think, is obviously distanced themselves as the favorite. But Coeur d'Alene and Lewiston are going to be in some battles, this winter for sure.
Yeah, that's going to be a lot of fun to watch. I forgot to mention that if we backtrack to that Owyhee tournament. This is not good synergy here, but St. Mary's was also competing in the small school bracket at the Owyhee Classic. And for St. Mary's, they played Malad in their tournament opener and won 55-22. They played Westside in the semifinals 41-33. And then in the championship had to go up against Ambrose in a rematch of that 2A championship from a year ago and lost 56-40. But that game was close. The final score is deceptive. It was a 1-point Ambrose lead at halftime. It was tight through the third. And then Ambrose hit 7 3-pointers in a row and pretty much buried it.
Well, and you turn over the ball like St. Mary's did too. And, that's just, if they can clean things up, that's a pretty tight game. I don't know how many times you're going to get chances to hit 7 threes in a row, but that's a stat that doesn't happen often. Let's put it that way. So you're going to have to clean a little bit up there as far as the offensive end, shoring up your turnover game. But St. Mary's is still a good team. I still see them as a favorite. I don't want to say they are the favorite in 2A, but they are going to be there again. I think them and Ambrose could very well play again in February, and we'll see how things roll, or in March, I should say. But we'll see how things progress throughout the season. St. Mary's has a pretty tough schedule, but they did a great job bringing in some 4A schools and some 3A schools into their schedule, and so we'll see how they can handle things down the stretch.
Well, and that tournament couldn't have gone any better for St. Mary's in terms of teams you played. You played all 3 2A teams. Malad is not going to be at state. Westside very well could be at state this year. Mm-hmm. They're one of the best teams in their league. And then, of course, Ambrose is going to be at state. So you're getting some like state tournament worthy teams that you're getting to see for your level for 2A, which is big.
Yeah, and you're losing a game that, really, in the grand scheme of things, doesn't mean much other than just a test to see where you're at. And, you get a chance to preview a team that you could see at state in the semis or in the championship, depending on how seeding happens this year. It's a good test for them, and we'll see how they respond and shore up some of that. And I think that they're going to learn a lot of things and maybe how to adjust their lineup for a state tournament run.
Well, based upon what I know with the Max Preps rankings, Ambrose beat St. Mary's. So St. Mary's will probably be ranked ahead of Ambrose.
Yeah. Well, they're playing a lot of 4A schools. So, that St. Mary's ranking is going to be pretty inflated, I would say. But, no, I think Ambrose is a great team too. I would love to see Ambrose play like a Lapwai too. I think would be a great game to see. But
yeah.
I'd love to see Lapwai play the 5A schedule, which we might see Lapwai play Lewiston next week in the Avista tournament. So, they're going to get a chance to play the likes of Kellogg and possibly Clarkston out of Washington and play Lewiston too. So, that the Wildcats are going to be flexing a little bit next week too, hopefully.
Yeah, it's going to be a lot of fun. Let's take a look at your North 9 for boys basketball here. Pretty similar to how it looked last week.
Got a couple surprises.
Yeah, St. Mary's moved down a little bit, but go ahead and take us through it.
So Lake City 1, Lapwai 2, Lewiston 3. Those didn't change. The sneaky one, Kamei, going up to 4. That they moved up 4 spots in my ranking. I think that the Cubs are a very, very, very deadly team if they're going to get into the state tournament. I don't think that they're going to knock off a Lapwai, but I would not be surprised to see a top 3 finish or top 4 finish out of them if they get to state as the number 2 team. Coeur d'Alene didn't change. They're still at 5. They're who they are. The Vikings are a good team. St. Mary's dropped 2 just because of the loss. Kellogg dropped 1 because the Cubs are doing so well. Nothing that Kellogg is doing wrong either, but we'll see how Kellogg responds next week with that coming down to Lewiston for that tournament. Good test against Lapwai. I think that'll be a pretty solid game to watch. Lakeside goes down 1. They didn't do anything wrong. They beat Grangeville. And then Prairie still at 9. So Moscow's on the outside looking in. They're creeping up. Genesis Prep is out there lurking as well. They've got a 5-2 record right now. So interesting to see how things move forward as we get deeper in the season. But as far as right now, we're kind of holding pat and seeing where that Avista tournament's going to have something to say with some of the rankings here in North Idaho.
Yeah, because you'll have teams from different classifications playing each other, which is going to be a lot of fun. So that is the North 9 this week for boys basketball up in North Idaho.
You
All
could
right.
get a Lewiston Lapwai final in that tournament, which would be an awesome game to see. I'll pay money to see that one.
Well, I wished for an Ambrose St. Mary's matchup last week, and I spoke it into existence. So let's do it. Let's go for Lapwai Lewiston.
Let's do it.
Yep, and we'll talk more about the Avista tournament next week, of course, right here on the North Idaho Prepcast. Ryan, Merry Christmas early.
Merry Christmas.
Yeah, you got big plans?
Just hanging around the house. It's snowing, and yeah, we'll just kind of be around here sledding and wrapping presents and all that fun stuff, and getting ready for Christmas, and just a chance to hang out with family and be, relaxed a little bit. Take a few days off from work, and yeah, it'll be fun. I'm excited.
Now, we were talking at Thanksgiving about how you have a Traeger, right? You were gonna.
Yep.
What are you cooking up for Christmas?
I'm debating. I think I'm gonna pull the trigger and do prime rib.
Okay.
Yeah. We'll roll the dice on that one. It turned out awesome I did it for New Year's last year, so I'm debating on whether to do it for Christmas or New Year's this year. So
yeah, that's what we're going up to Montana to see my folks, and my dad always makes a big prime rib, so I will be enjoying prime rib as well.
Yep, I'm excited for it. Like we talked about, what was it, 2 weeks ago? Body built by beef.
Right. That's right. Yeah. Okay. Well, have a safe Merry Christmas, Ryan, and
safe travel to you as well.
Yeah, this time of year, North Idaho, there were a lot of games that got postponed or canceled last week because of bad weather, and so yeah, everybody.
It could happen the next 2 weeks too. It's supposed to snow for the next 8-9 days. So
yeah, that's going to be a lot of fun. So everybody up north, if you're traveling for the holidays, please be safe, and we'll see you back here next week for another edition of the North Idaho Prepcast here on IdahoSports.com. Thanks for watching and listening.